Death? You're a guy in a Halloween costume, and not a very good one at that. Look at you. Cheap, cheap, cheap. Who are you?
I am Death.
No, you're not. Let me see who you are. You are Death.
Told you so.
Then I'm dead. Where are we? Is this heaven or is this hell?
This is actually Manchester.
I've died and gone to Manchester? Why Manchester?
Well, it was the only thing available at the time, given the circumstances.
Well, it's not good enough. I want another opinion. I want to talk to your supervisor.
Oh, you have just made a terrible mistake. But I gotta say, you have guaranteed that you will not stay in Manchester.
Good. Where am I going?
Oh, we are now sending you to Concord.
No!
And not just Concord. You will now be in the New Hampshire State Legislature, eternity in the House of Representatives.
No! No! No, 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 no! It was the night of the summer solstice, June 21st, 1937, 3 o'clock in the morning, Monday. Dr. Frank Sickles was on his way home to Pennacook after a difficult night at the state hospital there in Concord. There'd been an emergency with an inmate heart attack. The inmate had survived, but Dr. Frank had been up and working 14 straight hours. That night, his was the only car on the road. As he passed the Old North Cemetery, a figure appeared at the gate and ran right into the road. He, of course, slammed the brakes of his 1936 Lincoln Zephyr, but it was too late. He hit the woman square on. But just as he hit her, as it would, time slowed down, and through the windscreen, the woman, as she came up over the bonnet, made eye contact with the good doctor. And he recognized her. It was the Princess Caroline de Faucigny-Lusange. No doubt about it. And she was smiling. But see, the problem was, the princess was dead. She had been dead now for 8 months. As the car hit her, there was this whoomp sound like a pillow slamming on a bed, and then the soft, sad wail that trailed off like it was moving far away, and then the inside of the windshield fogged up, and there was a very, very faint smell of perfume. Well, Dr. Frank pulled the car over, of course, ran back, looked up and down the road. Nothing, no sound, no victim, no damage to the car. "Hello?" he yelled. "Where are you?" That was the very first time the ghost of the princess was seen. But you know, within an hour of the Concord incident, the princess was also seen in the hallway of the Mount Washington Hotel up in Bretton Woods. A chef on his way to the kitchen to get ready to prepare for breakfast, he saw her and he thought nothing of it. He pulled his forelock to her as she passed, but then he realized who it was and he looked back. She was gone. Now, in case you don't know, Princess Caroline de Faucigny-Lusange was, let me tell you, she had been the owner of the Mount Washington Hotel there in Bretton Woods. That's why the chef knew her. At the time of the construction of the Mount Washington, the princess was the second wife of the man who built it, Joseph Stickney. He was a coal and railroad magnate and a millionaire from Concord. Her maiden name was Carolyn Foster. They married in 1894. She was 27, he was 54. That's 27 years her senior. And of course, he spoiled his new wife shamelessly, and she loved him to death. But he died in 1904, only 1 year after the hotel was completed. Carolyn moved to Europe, but she returned each summer to oversee things at the hotel. She always stayed in the rooms she and Joseph occupied. In 1913, she met and married Prince Aimon de Faucigny-Lusange. The couple lived in Paris, except in the summers when they came back to Bretton Woods. Prince died in the spring of 1922. Caroline died in 1936. She is entombed in a classic Greek mausoleum there at the North Cemetery. And the man she occupies the sepulchre with is not Prince de Faucigny-Lusange. Rather, in death, Caroline lies beside the man she loved most in all the world, Joseph Stickney. Her ghost, by the way, still haunts the Mount Washington. Her spirit has been seen more times than any other ghost in New Hampshire, maybe all of New England. Almost always they see her on the summer solstice. Why the solstice? Well, because it's the start of the season, of course. This is a story my grandfather used to tell every Halloween. See, grandfather, he was friends, actually grandfather and grandmother, they were friends with Lemuel and Olive Dooley. And the Dooleys lived in an old farm out on Polk Road in Benton. They had no children, but they did have chickens, a garden, a cow, and an old horse they called Frank. Well, in the middle of a summer night, Olive had a seizure, and she thrashed around so much in bed that she almost woke Lemuel up. Next morning, Lem did get up, went out, milked the cow. When he came back, Olive was still in bed, so he went to wake her. "Oh, geez," Lemuel said, "Olive's dead." "Dang," he said. Now, being a Yankee, Lemuel didn't waste any time. He went right out to the work shed, and before noon, he had cobbled up a sweet little pine coffin. Lem then went back into the house and took the feather comforter off the bed and went back and lined the box with it. He then carried Olive out and put her in the box, and she looked nice. Being summer, it was still light, and he loaded the coffin on the wagon and hitched up the wagon to the horse called Frank, and they started for the old cemetery. He figured he would have enough time to dig the grave before total darkness set in. So Frank and the horse started the last journey for Olive Dooley. Well, they approached the old family cemetery there on Church Hill, and at the gate, Frank the horse pulled one of the rear wheels of the wagon over a small square of granite, and the wagon bucked, and Olive and her coffin fell off onto the ground. The cover of the coffin wasn't nailed on yet, because Lemuel was going to say a final goodbye to his wife before he put her in the ground. Well, the coffin landed with a bang, and Olive sat up. She wasn't dead after all. Wonderful, Lemuel thought. I won't have to make my own supper tonight. Well, Olive got better, and she lived another 4 years, but then she had another seizure, and she died a second time. And this time, Lemmy, he was ready for it. Coffin was still in the workshop. It only needed a little dusting, which he did, and he laid out his wife for a second time, and then he loaded the coffin onto the wagon, hitched up the horse, and as he got to the cemetery gates, he said to the horse, "Now, Frank," he said, "you mind that rock this time. You remember what happened before," he said. They expected to find one body, but they found the bodies of hundreds. I'll tell you the story. Binky's friend comes back from the dead to address town meeting. I'll tell you the story on Fritz Weatherby's Haunted New Hampshire. There was a mass murder in Derry, New Hampshire back in the 19th century, and one of the victims was the devil himself. Got the story from Richard Holmes' wonderful readable book, Nutfield Rambles. Story happened in 1830. Richard Crispin, he was a cussed man, mean and stingy and dishonest, lived with his wife on a hard-scrabbled piece of farmland on the outskirts of town. The Crispin's 22-year-old daughter, Ruby, hated the place. She longed to get away. One day she forged her father's name to a note and went to the bank to cash it. She wanted to get to Lowell, work in the mills. But the banker in town, he knew that Crispin would never part with money like that. And he locked the girl in a room and was about to send for her father. But Ruby said she knew something about her father that would make her petty crime look like nothing. Go get the constable and she'd tell him the story. And so the authorities came. And Ruby told this story. Traveling salesperson stopped by the farm a couple of years before. Salesperson had an inventory of jewelry that no one at the farm could afford. He asked if he might spend the night. A price was agreed upon, and at supper that evening, Richard Crispin beat the man to death with a piece of firewood. Then Crispin and the family cut the man up into small pieces and took him to the basement and buried him in shallow holes. But it was summertime, and soon, Ruby said, the house began to stink. And so they dug the man up, or at least the pieces, and they took the pieces to the edge of the property, threw them in an abandoned tanning pit. Ruby said she'd take the cops there and show them. Well, not only the police, but the entire town descended on the farm. This was news. Almost at once, dozens of volunteers were digging, and soon they uncovered not the remains of one person, but hundreds of bones and skulls. It had been a mass killing. No one had any clue that this number of traveling salesmen had ever visited Derry over the years. It was horrible. And then somebody discovered the skull of Satan himself. They knew it was Satan because there were small horns growing from the temple. Now, this was the time of the Millerites and the belief that the second coming was at hand. Jesus would descend from heaven any day. The devil's skull was obviously an omen. It was the last straw. Richard Crispin was, of course, arrested and charged, but not with murder, but with stealing sheep from his neighbors. Oh, and by the way, Ruby never did get to Lowell. My friend, Binky Sears, felt like someone had slapped him in the face hard. He felt like it was a dream. He had put his hand out on the back of a chair to steady himself. Binky'd been late getting to the town meeting. He'd walked into the Sawyer Town Hall after stuff had already started, and as he came in the hall, Binky's old friend Lemmy Berger was addressing the crowd. He was speaking in favor of a warrant article to create a wildflower walk. The idea for such a walk had been Lemmy's dream for years, and that he would be speaking on it made sense, except for one thing. Lemmy Berger had been dead for 3 months. Binky himself had attended his funeral, and so as well had a couple dozen other people sitting in rapt attention there in the auditorium. And now Binky was thinking, this is a dream, it must be a dream, wake up, wake up. And he pinched his arm really hard, it really hurt, but he did not wake up. And this was not a dream. This was really the Sawyer Town Hall. I've died, Binky thought, or I'm in a parallel universe. He looked at Lemmy across the hall. Yes, it was Lemmy. It looked like Lemmy. It sounded like Lemmy. Binky's mind kept flashing to the sight of his friend laid out in his casket, his beard perfectly trimmed. At the wake, everybody commented on how Lemmy never in his life trimmed his beard to look that nice. Lemmy's cousin Ralph said he hoped God would recognize him with his new look, laughter, and tears. But this Lemmy, this Lazarus back from the dead, He had the old scruffy beard. Binky went to run out of the hall. It was just too much. As he turned, he ran right into Webster Webster, and Webster Webster was smiling and crying at the same time. "It's perfect," Webster Webster said. "I swear Lemmy is back with us. He'll get his wildflower trail, you bet. Nobody will vote against it." And here Lemmy stopped speaking, and the crowd got to its feet, applauding. Not a dry eye in the house. Town moderator Curly Fry banged his gavel. "All those in favor," he said, and a roar came up from the floor. "Those against?" And there was dead silence. And then there was cheering, and Binky fainted. When he came to, he was on the floor at the rear of the hall. Webster Webster had actually caught him when he swooned, had lowered him to the floor gently. He hadn't been out long because the blood returned to his head right off. When he awoke, he thought he was at home in his bed, and that, thank goodness, it had only been a dream. In fact, his first words were, "I was dreaming," and then he saw the half a dozen or so people staring down at him, and he knew he wasn't at home in bed. He tried to sit up. Okay, so what was the story? Well, at the start of the meeting, moderator Curly Fry read the warrant article and then he said, "Well, folks, most of us knew and loved Lemmy Burger, and we miss him. But tonight, Lemmy's nephew, Larry Fry, is going to speak for his uncle. And Larry, as the family knows, is uncanny in his ability to imitate his uncle. He could get the entire family howling with laughter with his imitation. And tonight, Larry is here, dressed in his uncle's actual clothes, and he has a false beard, but I think you will be amazed how much he looks like Lemmy." And at this point, Larry, dressed as Lemmy, came into the hall from the selectmen's offices. The crowd gasped. He looked so much like his uncle. It was amazing. And Larry played the part to perfection, right down to the word golly, which his uncle used to say a lot. It was one of the most wonderful nights anyone in the hall could remember. Well, of course, except for Binky. That evening almost killed Binky. So, death must come to us all, but Halloween is the time when we tweak death's nose and we say, "You don't scare me," and then, of course, we run away scared to death. Well, we did some tweaking tonight. Was it fun? Oh, I hope so. Pleasant dreams.